I walked past Derek's ground floor window at 11:47 p.m., just like every night for the past 3 years. The dog needed her walk, and the route never changed, down Maple Street, around the cul-de-sac, back home to my perfect glass house with my perfect fiancée. Except tonight, I heard Elise laughing inside Derek's living room. Not just any laugh. The throaty, genuine one she used to save for me, the one that made me propose 6 months ago with a ring that cost more than my car. I stopped walking. Luna, my golden retriever, sniffed at Derek's mailbox while I stood frozen on the sidewalk like an idiot. Through the thin walls of his bachelor pad, I could hear her voice clearly. Don't worry, he never checks. My stomach dropped to my shoes. The condensation on Derek's window caught the streetlight, but I could see through the gaps. Wine glasses on the coffee table. 2 figures on his leather couch, sitting way too close for neighbors who barely knew each other. Then Derek's hand appeared on her shoulder. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. 40 seconds of audio recorded from outside that window, her voice, his laugh, the clink of wine glasses, and something that sounded like a kiss. I walked home in silence, Luna trotting beside me, completely unaware that my world had just collapsed. The smart locks on our glass house clicked open with my fingerprint. I sat in the dark living room, staring at the recording on my phone screen, waiting. She came home 2 hours later, keys jingling, humming some song I didn't recognize. "Hey, babe," Elise called out, dropping her gym bag by the door. "Sorry I'm so late. Killer spin class tonight." I turned on the lamp beside my chair. She looked perfect. Not a hair out of place, makeup still flawless, wearing the expensive workout clothes I'd bought her for Christmas. "How was your workout?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Oh, you know how it is. Sarah pushed us hard tonight. A 30-minute HIIT session, then another 20 on the bikes. I'm completely wiped." She stretched her arms above her head, playing the part perfectly. "The instructor made us do these insane burpees. I thought I was going to die." Every word was a lie. Smooth, practiced, delivered with the same confidence she used in corporate boardrooms. "Sounds intense," I said. It was. "I'm going to shower and crash. Love you." She kissed my forehead, a quick, distracted peck, and headed upstairs. I listened to the water running, the sound echoing through our open concept house with its floor-to-ceiling windows that let everyone see inside. The irony wasn't lost on me. I pulled up Derek's contact and typed, "We need to talk. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., Bridgeport Coffee." The response came back in 30 seconds. A single thumbs-up emoji. Smug bastard. Derek showed up 5 minutes late wearing his usual uniform of designer jeans and a polo shirt that probably cost more than most people's rent. He owned 3 rental properties in our neighborhood and drove a BMW that he washed every Sunday morning while playing music loud enough to wake the ended. "Tate, buddy," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "What's this about? You sounded pretty serious." I studied his face. Mid-40s, perpetual tan, the kind of guy who called everyone buddy, and thought charm could solve any problem. He ordered a black coffee from the waitress and flashed her his $1,000,000 smile. "We need to discuss Elise," I said. Something flickered in his eyes. "Your fiancée? What about her?" "You tell me." Derek leaned back, spreading his hands. "I don't know what you're getting at, man. We're neighbors. We say hello when we see each other. That's about it." "Is that what you call it?" "Call what?" I placed my phone on the table between us and hit play. Elise's voice filled the small space around our booth. "Don't worry, he never checks." Then Derek's laugh, low and intimate. The sound of movement, fabric rustling, wine glasses clinking. Derek's face went pale. The confident smile disappeared. "Look, Tate, keep listening." The recording continued. Her voice again. "He's so predictable. Same walk every night, same time, same route. He thinks I'm at the gym 3 nights a week." Derek's response was muffled, but audible. "What he doesn't know won't hurt him." I stopped the playback. "Want to hear the rest?" Derek's hands were shaking. He gripped his coffee cup to hide it, but I saw everything. 3 years of consulting work had taught me to read people, to spot the tells that revealed when someone was lying. "Nothing happened," he said quickly. "We were just talking. She's been having problems with the wedding planning, stress from work. I was being a good neighbor, listening. Bullshit. Tate, I swear. You want to know what I heard after I stopped recording?" I leaned forward. "I stood outside your window for another 10 minutes. I heard her moan your name." Derek's coffee cup hit the table hard enough to splash. Jesus Christ. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice calm and level. "You're going to move out by the end of the month. Find another place to live, another neighborhood. I don't care where." "You can't make me." I can send this recording to your landlord. Mrs. Patterson is 73 years old and goes to church every Sunday. She rents to you because you promised to be a quiet, respectful tenant. How do you think she'll feel about you seducing engaged women in the house she owns?" Derek's jaw worked silently. "I can also send it to your business partners. Didn't you just sign that big development deal with the Hendersons? They're very family-oriented people, conservative values. I'm sure they'd love to know what kind of man they're working with." "You're insane." "I'm practical." I stood up and dropped a $5 bill on the table. "End of the month, Derek. Don't make me remind you again." I walked out of the coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in months. The first move was always the hardest. After that, it was just a matter of following through. Elise found out about Derek moving 3 days later. She cornered me in our kitchen while I was making breakfast, her face flushed with panic. "Derek's leaving," she said. "He told Janet he's moving to Portland. Why would he do that so suddenly?" Janet Morrison was Elise's best friend and the biggest gossip in our neighborhood. If Derek had told Janet anything, it meant he was trying to control the narrative. "Maybe he got a better job offer," I said, not looking up from my eggs. "It doesn't make sense. He just renewed his lease 6 months ago, and he loves it here. He's always talking about how perfect this neighborhood is." "People change their minds." Elise stared at me for a long moment. I could feel her eyes on my face, searching for something. "Did you two have some kind of fight?" "Why would you think that?" "I don't know. It's just weird timing." I turned to face her. "Is there something you want to tell me about Derek?" Her face went through a series of micro-expressions: surprise, guilt, calculation, and finally, defiance. "Like what? You tell me." "I don't know what you're implying, but I don't appreciate the tone." I pulled out my phone and set it on the kitchen counter. "Then maybe this will clarify things." I hit play. Her own voice filled the room. "Don't worry, he never checks." Then Derek's laugh, the sound of wine glasses. Her voice again. "He's so predictable. Same walk every night, same time, same route." Elise went completely still. The color drained from her face as she listened to herself betraying me with casual cruelty. When the recording ended, the silence stretched between us like a chasm. "You were spying on me," she said finally. I was walking our dog. "You recorded me without my consent. You were in someone else's house with the windows open, talking loud enough for the whole street to hear. This is illegal. You can't what? Can't find out that my fiancé has been lying to me for months? Can't discover that the woman I'm supposed to marry thinks I'm a predictable fool?" Elise's composure cracked. "You don't understand. It's not what you think." "Then explain it." I felt trapped. The wedding planning, your expectations, the pressure to be perfect all the time. Derek was just someone to talk to, someone who listened without judging. "Is that what you call it when he had his hands on you?" "Nothing physical happened." "I saw you, Elise. Through his window. I watched him touch you. I heard you respond." She closed her eyes. "It was just comfort. Emotional support. You've been so distant lately, so focused on work and the house and everything except us." "So this is my fault?" "I'm not saying that. I'm saying we both made mistakes." I stared at her. Even caught red-handed, she was trying to make this about my failings, trying to share the blame for her betrayal. "Pack your things," I said. "What?" "Pack your things and go to your mother's house. We're done." "Tate, please. We can work through this. Couples therapy, counseling, whatever you want. It doesn't have to end like this." "It already ended, the moment you decided I was too predictable to deserve loyalty." I walked past her toward the stairs. "I'll be at the gym for 2 hours. I want you gone when I get back." "What about the ring?" I stopped. "What about it?" "It was my grandmother's stone. Reset in a new setting, but the diamond belonged to my family." I pulled the receipt from my wallet and handed it to her. Actually, it was a brand new diamond from Cartier. Cost me $18,000. I kept the receipt because I'm predictable like that. Her face went white. "You're returning it?" "Already did. This morning." I left her standing in our glass house, surrounded by windows that showed the whole world exactly what kind of person she really was. The gym became my refuge. Big Mike's Boxing Club sat in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation office. But inside those walls, I found the only honest people left in my life. "You look like someone ran over your dog," Mike said, watching me pound the heavy bag. "Want to talk about it? Or just keep hitting things?" Mike Torino was 62 years old, built like a fire hydrant, and had been running this gym for 30 years. He'd trained Golden Gloves champions and weekend warriors with equal dedication, and he had a gift for reading people. My fiancée was cheating, I said between punches. With our neighbor. Shit, I'm sorry, man. Kayla Rodriguez looked up from the speed bag. The corporate shark, with the perfect makeup and the BMW? That's the one. I never liked her, Kayla said. Too polished, like she was always performing for an audience. Kayla was a software engineer who came to the gym every day after work to hit things until the code makes sense. She was 35, 5'4", and could bench press more than most men I knew. You catch them together? Mike asked. Overheard them through his window. Recorded it on my phone? Smart. Evidence is everything in situations like this. I confronted him, told him to move out of the neighborhood, and he agreed. Didn't have much choice. I threatened to send the recording to his landlord and business partners. Kayla grinned. I like your style. What about the fiancée? Kicked her out. Returned the engagement ring. Good. Clean break is the best break. Mike handed me a towel. But something tells me this isn't over. He was right. When I got home that evening, Janet Morrison was waiting in my driveway. She climbed out of her Mercedes as soon as I parked, her face set in hard lines. We need to talk, she said. About what? About what you did to Elise. Janet was 41, divorced twice, and had made a career out of other people's drama. She worked in real estate and knew everyone's business in a 6-block radius. What I did to Elise? Throwing her out like garbage, over some misunderstanding with Derek. Misunderstanding? I laughed. Is that what she's calling it? She made a mistake. She was lonely, confused about the wedding. You could have worked through it like adults. She was cheating, Janet, for months, lying to my face every time she came home from his house. It wasn't physical. You weren't there. You didn't see them together. Janet stepped closer, lowering her voice. Elise is my best friend. She's been like a sister to me for 15 years, and you destroyed her over some emotional connection that got a little out of hand. I destroyed her? She's devastated. Crying every day, can't eat, can't sleep. She lost her fiancé, her home, her whole life, because you couldn't forgive one mistake. I studied Janet's face, the righteous anger, the protective fury. Something didn't add up. How long have you known? I asked. Known what? About Derek, about the affair. Janet's eyes shifted. Just for a second, but enough. I didn't know anything until she told me what happened. Bullshit. Excuse me. You're the neighborhood gossip queen. You know what everyone's having for breakfast before they do. There's no way Elise was sneaking around for months without you finding out. I don't spy on my friends. No, but you enable them. You cover for them. You probably helped her come up with alibis. Janet's face flushed red. You're paranoid. Am I? Let me guess. You were the one who suggested she tell me she was going to the gym 3 nights a week. You probably even took some photos of the two of you at dinner so she'd have evidence of her fake girls' nights. The silence stretched between us. Janet's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Get off my property, I said. You're making a huge mistake, Tate. Elise deserves better than this. Yeah? Well, maybe she should have thought about that before she decided I wasn't worth her loyalty. Janet stormed back to her car, but not before giving me a look that promised this wasn't over. I watched her drive away, my mind already working on the next phase. If Janet wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real game looked like. Mrs. Durham called me 3 days later. As president of the Homeowners Association, she took her duties seriously, especially when those duties involved neighborhood drama. Tate, dear, I hope you don't mind me calling. I've been hearing some concerning rumors about you and Elise. What kind of rumors? Well, Janet Morrison mentioned that you two have separated, and Derek Patterson is moving out quite suddenly. People are starting to talk. Mrs. Durham was 78 years old and had lived in our neighborhood longer than anyone. She'd been HOA president for 12 years and ran the monthly meetings like a military operation. People can talk all they want, I said. It's a free country. Of course, dear, but we do have community standards to maintain. And with the Hendersons' development project moving forward, we need to present a united front. The Hendersons were building a new shopping complex 2 miles away. Property values in our neighborhood had already increased 15% in anticipation of the project. What are you suggesting? Perhaps we should have a special meeting. We'll clear the air, address any concerns. You know how rumors can spiral out of control. I smiled. Mrs. Durham was handing me exactly what I needed. That sounds like a great idea. When were you thinking? This Saturday evening, 7 o'clock in the community center, just the immediate neighbors, nothing formal. I'll be there. Wonderful. And Tate? You might want to prepare some kind of statement. People are going to have questions. Don't worry, Mrs. Durham. I'll give them all the answers they need. Saturday evening arrived with a thunderstorm that matched my mood. I walked into the community center carrying a small duffel bag and my laptop. 23 neighbors were already seated in folding chairs, including Elise, Janet, and Derek. Derek looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Elise wore a black dress and minimal makeup, playing the role of the wounded victim. Janet sat beside her like a bodyguard, shooting daggers at anyone who looked in their direction. "Thank you all for coming," Mrs. Durham said, calling the meeting to order. "As you know, we're here to address some recent tensions in our community. I think it's best if we let the parties involved speak for themselves." She gestured to me. "Tate, would you like to start?" I stood up and walked to the front of the room. "Thank you, Mrs. Durham. I know there have been a lot of rumors flying around, so I thought it would be best to set the record straight." I opened my laptop and connected it to the projector screen. About a week ago, I discovered that my fiancée had been having an affair with our neighbor Derek Patterson. Murmurs rippled through the room. Elise's face went pale. Rather than rely on hearsay or speculation, I documented the evidence. I clicked play on the audio file. Elise's voice filled the room. "Don't worry, he never checks." Then Derek's laugh. The intimate conversation about my predictable habits, their obvious familiarity, the casual cruelty of their betrayal. The room went silent. Derek stared at the floor. Elise looked like she wanted to disappear. "But that's not the whole story," I continued. "See, I started digging deeper, and I found out that this affair was orchestrated by someone else entirely." I clicked to the next slide, a series of text messages between Janet and Elise dating back 4 months. Janet: "Derek's having a pool party Friday. Perfect opportunity." Elise: "I don't know. It feels wrong." Janet: "You deserve some excitement. Tate takes you for granted." More messages. Janet encouraging the relationship, providing alibis, even suggesting specific lies for Elise to tell me. "Janet Morrison has been manipulating my fiancée for months," I said, encouraging her to cheat, helping her cover it up, and now trying to make me look like the villain for refusing to accept betrayal. Janet shot to her feet. "This is insane. Those messages are private." "So was my relationship with Elise, but that didn't stop you from destroying it." "I was being a supportive friend. You were being a vindictive woman who couldn't stand to see other people happy." The room erupted. Mrs. Durham banged her gavel, calling for order. Derek tried to leave, but I wasn't finished. "Derek," I said loudly, "before you go, why don't you tell everyone about your conversation with Janet 2 weeks ago, the one where she told you exactly when I'd be out of town for work?" Derek froze in the doorway. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" "Because I have the security footage from the coffee shop where you met. Janet specifically told you I'd be in Chicago for 3 days. She suggested it would be the perfect time for you and Elise to take your relationship to the next level." I clicked to another slide, screenshots from the coffee shop's security camera showing Janet and Derek in deep conversation. The timestamp shows this conversation happened the day before I left for my business trip. The same trip where Elise suddenly decided she needed to stay home and relax instead of coming with me like we'd planned. Elise stood up, tears streaming down her face. "Stop it. Please just stop." "Why? Because you're embarrassed? Because everyone can see what kind of person you really are?" "Because this is cruel and humiliating and completely unnecessary." "You know what was unnecessary? Cheating on me, lying to me, making me feel like I was going crazy for noticing that something was wrong." I turned back to the room. "I wanted you all to know the truth before the rumors got completely out of hand. Elise and I are no longer engaged. Derek is moving out of the neighborhood, and Janet..." I looked directly at her. "Janet needs to find some new friends because her current hobby of destroying other people's relationships isn't welcome here anymore." Janet's face was bright red. "You vindictive bastard. This is all because you can't handle the fact that your perfect little fiancé found someone better." "Better?" I laughed. "Derek's unemployed. Did you know that? The rental properties belong to his ex-wife. The BMW is leased. He's been living off alimony and credit cards for 2 years. Derek's face went ashen. "That's not true." "Isn't it? I had you investigated, Derek. Professional curiosity. Turns out your big development deal with the Hendersons fell through last month when they discovered you don't actually have any assets to invest." The room was spinning with revelations. Mrs. Durham looked overwhelmed. Half the neighbors were whispering among themselves. The other half were staring at the 3 people whose lives I'd just destroyed in public. "I think we're done here," I said, packing up my laptop. "Thanks for your time, everyone. And Mrs. Durham, you might want to update the HOA directory. We're going to need some new contact information. I walked out of the community center into the storm, leaving behind the wreckage of 3 reputations and the satisfied knowledge that justice had been served. The next morning, I was drinking coffee in my kitchen when I saw the moving truck pull up to Derek's house. He'd managed to find somewhere else to go faster than I'd expected, which meant he was more desperate than I'd realized. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? You bastard. Derek's voice was raw with rage. You destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life. I just made sure everyone knew about it. The Hendersons called off the deal. My landlord is evicting me. My ex-wife found out about the affair and she's cutting off my alimony. Sounds like a series of natural consequences. I'm going to sue you. Defamation, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. With what lawyer? You're broke, remember. The line went quiet except for Derek's heavy breathing. Here's some free advice, I said. Next time you want to sleep with someone's fiancé, make sure you're not stupid enough to do it in a house with ground floor windows facing the street. I hung up and blocked his number. 2 hours later, Elise showed up at my door. She looked terrible. Red eyes, unwashed hair, wearing the same clothes she'd had on at the HOA meeting. Can we talk? She asked. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She stood in the living room of what used to be our home, looking around like she was seeing it for the first time. I'm sorry, she said finally, for all of it. The lying, the cheating, the way I tried to blame you. You didn't deserve any of this. No, I didn't. I know you hate me. I know you'll probably never forgive me. But I need you to understand that it wasn't about you not being enough. It was about me being weak and selfish and stupid. I studied her face. The tears looked real. The remorse seemed genuine. But it was too little, too late. What do you want, Elise? I want to explain about Janet. What about her? She's been in love with me for years, since college. I knew it, but I pretended I didn't because it was easier than dealing with it. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What are you saying? She orchestrated the whole thing with Derek. Not because she wanted to hurt you, but because she wanted to break us up. She thought if I cheated, you'd leave me, and then she'd have a chance. Are you telling me that Janet manipulated you into having an affair so she could seduce you herself? Elise nodded miserably. She's been working on me for months, telling me you were taking me for granted, that I deserved better, that I should explore my options. When Derek started paying attention to me, she encouraged it. And you went along with it. I was confused. The wedding planning was stressful, work was crazy, and Janet kept telling me that cold feet were normal, that maybe I should make sure you were really the right person before I committed my whole life. So you decided to test that theory by sleeping with our neighbor. Elise flinched. It wasn't supposed to go that far. It started as just talking, just friendship. But Derek was charming and attentive, and Janet kept pushing me to see where it would lead. Where is this going, Elise? Janet's been calling me nonstop since the meeting. She wants me to move in with her. She says we can start over together, that she's always known we were meant to be. I stared at her. And I finally see what she's been doing, how she manipulated both of us. She destroyed our relationship so she could have me for herself. Congratulations. You figured out that your best friend is a sociopath. What do you want me to do about it? I want you to help me make her pay. The request hung in the air between us. Elise was asking me to partner with her in revenge against the woman who had orchestrated our breakup. The irony was almost beautiful. Why would I do that? Because she played us both, because she deserves to face consequences for what she did, and because she hesitated. Because maybe if we work together to fix this, we can find a way to fix us. I looked at the woman I'd planned to marry, beautiful, successful, broken by her own choices and someone else's manipulation. Part of me wanted to help her, part of me still loved her, but a bigger part of me was done with all of them. No, I said. Tate, you made your choices, Elise. Janet may have influenced you, but she didn't force you to lie to me. She didn't make you sneak around behind my back. She didn't put Derek's hands on your body. I know that, but there's no but. You chose to betray me. You chose to make me feel like I was going crazy. You chose to let me plan a wedding to someone who didn't respect me enough to be faithful. Elise started crying again. So that's it? We're just done? 5 years together, and you're willing to throw it all away? I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that. I walked to the door and opened it. Goodbye, Elise. She stood there for another minute, tears streaming down her face, waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, she walked past me and out of my life forever. 3 weeks later, the annual neighborhood block party arrived like a scheduled execution. Mrs. Durham had organized it months in advance, and despite everything that had happened, she was determined to proceed as planned. "It will be good for community morale," she told me when she called to confirm my attendance. A chance for everyone to move past recent unpleasantness. I almost declined. The smart play would have been to stay home, avoid the drama, let sleeping dogs lie. But something about Mrs. Durham's tone, the careful way she said recent unpleasantness, made me curious. The party was held in Riverside Park, 2 blocks from our neighborhood. White tents, folding tables, a DJ playing classic rock, and enough potato salad to feed a small army. I arrived at 6 p.m. carrying a cooler of beer and my phone. Most of the neighbors were already there. Kids ran around with face paint and balloons, while adults clustered in small groups, drinking and gossiping. I spotted Janet immediately. She was holding court near the dessert table, gesturing dramatically while a group of women listened with rapt attention. "Tate!" Mrs. Durham appeared at my elbow. "So glad you could make it. How are you holding up?" "I'm fine, thanks." Good. I know this has been a difficult time." She lowered her voice. "I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of inviting a few people from outside the immediate neighborhood. The Hendersons, some folks from the city planning committee. It's important that we present a united front." I nodded, understanding perfectly. Mrs. Durham was worried about property values. The last thing she wanted was for word to spread that our quiet suburban paradise was full of cheating spouses and neighborhood drama. "Of course, community image is important." "Exactly." She beamed at me. "I knew you'd understand." I grabbed a beer from my cooler and wandered through the party, making small talk and observing the social dynamics. Derek was conspicuously absent. He'd moved out the week before, destination unknown. Elise wasn't there either, which surprised me until I realized she probably couldn't face the neighbors after the HUA meeting. But Janet was working the crowd like a politician, spinning her version of recent events to anyone who would listen. "It's really quite sad," I heard her telling the Hendersons. "Tate completely overreacted to what was essentially a minor misunderstanding. Poor Elise is devastated." "What kind of misunderstanding?" Mrs. Henderson asked. "Oh, you know how men can be. Jealous, possessive. Elise was just being friendly with Derek, and Tate convinced himself something inappropriate was happening." I moved closer, staying just outside their circle. "That's terrible," Mr. Henderson said. "I've known Tate for years. He always seemed so level-headed." "People change," Janet said sadly. "Sometimes stress brings out the worst in us. The wedding planning, work pressure, financial concerns, it all adds up." "Financial concerns?" Mrs. Henderson looked confused. "Well, you know how expensive weddings can be, and Tate's consulting business hasn't been doing well lately. I think he was looking for someone to blame for his problems." I felt my jaw clench. Janet was rewriting history, making me the villain and herself the innocent bystander. Worse, she was spreading lies about my business to potential clients. "Actually," I said, stepping into the circle, "my business is doing great. In fact, I just signed a contract with Morrison Development." Janet's face went white. Morrison Development was her real estate company. "That's wonderful," Mrs. Henderson said. "What kind of work?" "IT security audit. Apparently there have been some concerns about data breaches and employee misconduct. The insurance company is requiring a full investigation before they'll renew the liability policy." Janet's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Morrison Development was her company, but she wasn't the sole owner. Her business partner, David Morrison, handled the financial side while Janet focused on sales. If their insurance was under review, it meant someone had filed a complaint. "I'm sure it's just routine," Janet said weakly. "Oh no, this is quite serious. Allegations of privacy violations, unauthorized access to client information, that sort of thing. The kind of behavior that could result in criminal charges if proven." I was lying, of course, but Janet didn't know that. And given her recent activities, manipulating my fiancée, destroying my relationship, spreading lies about my business, she had every reason to be paranoid about investigations. "I should go," she said quickly. "Early morning tomorrow." "Of course. Give my regards to David. I'm looking forward to working with him." Janet practically ran to her car. I watched her leave, then turned back to the Hendersons with a smile. "Sorry about that. Where were we?" The rest of the party passed uneventfully. I made small talk, ate barbecue, and watched the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. As people started packing up, Mrs. Durham approached me again. "Thank you for coming, Tate, and thank you for handling that situation with Janet so gracefully." "What situation?" She smiled knowingly. "I may be old, dear, but I'm not blind. Janet has been spreading stories about you all evening. It was nice to see someone stand up to her for once. She's been through a lot lately. losing her best friend, dealing with business stress. I'm sure she'll bounce back. I'm sure she will, but perhaps somewhere else. I heard she's thinking about relocating her business to Portland. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Oh, yes. Apparently Derek Patterson recommended it highly. Said the market there is much more forgiving. I laughed despite myself. Even in exile, Derek was still causing problems for Janet. Some people never learned. Well, I hope she finds what she's looking for. I'm sure she will, dear. I'm sure she will. 6 months later, I was sitting in my office when Kayla called with news. You're going to love this, she said. Remember your friend Janet? Former friend. What about her? She got arrested last week. Embezzlement, fraud, identity theft, the whole 9 yards. I leaned back in my chair. Tell me everything. Apparently, she's been skimming money from her real estate clients for years, inflating closing costs, pocketing escrow funds, forging signatures on documents. Her business partner finally figured it out and called the police. How much money? Over $200,000. She's looking at serious prison time. I felt a surge of satisfaction. What about Elise? That's the best part. Guess who was Janet's accountant? My blood went cold. Elise? Yep. She's been handling Janet's books for the past 3 years. The DA thinks she was either involved in the fraud or criminally negligent in her duties. Either way, her CPA license is toast. I stared out my office window at the city skyline. Elise had built her entire career on her reputation for financial integrity. If she lost her license, she'd lose everything. Her job, her clients, her professional credibility. Is she being charged? Not yet, but the investigation is ongoing. Word is she's trying to cut a deal, testify against Janet in exchange for immunity. Will it work? Depends on how deep she was in it. If she was just naive and trusting, maybe. If she knew what Janet was doing and looked the other way. Kayla's voice trailed off. She's screwed up. Pretty much. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about justice and consequences and the strange way life had of balancing the scales. I hadn't planned for Janet to be a criminal. I hadn't orchestrated Elise's downfall. But I couldn't deny the poetic justice of it all. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Can we talk? It's important. E. I stared at the message for 5 minutes before responding. No. Another text came immediately. Please, I know you hate me, but I need help. Janet destroyed everything. I typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on. You destroyed everything. Janet just helped. The phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. Finally, I answered. What do you want, Elise? I need a lawyer. Her voice was shaky, desperate. A good one, someone who can help me navigate this mess with Janet. Call the Bar Association. They have referral services. Tate, please. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm scared. The prosecutors think I was involved in Janet's schemes. They're threatening to charge me as an accomplice. Were you involved? No. I had no idea what she was doing. I just prepared her tax returns and managed her business accounts. I never questioned where the money came from. That's what accountants are supposed to do. Question where money comes from. I trusted her. She was my best friend. Yeah, well, we both know how that worked out. Elise started crying. I'm going to lose everything. My license, my job, my reputation. I'll never work in finance again. Maybe you should have thought about that before you let Janet manipulate you into destroying our relationship. This isn't about us. This is about my life falling apart. Your life fell apart the moment you decided to cheat on me. Everything that's happened since then is just the natural progression of that choice. You can't possibly believe I deserve this. I thought about it for a moment. Did she deserve to lose her career over Janet's crimes? Did she deserve to have her life destroyed by association with a sociopath? I don't know what you deserve, I said finally. But I know what I deserved. I deserved a fiancé who was loyal. I deserved honesty. I deserved to be treated with respect and basic human decency. And I didn't get any of that from you. So this is revenge? You're going to let me suffer because I hurt you. This isn't revenge, Elise. This is consequences. Janet committed crimes, and you were her accountant. The fact that she also destroyed our relationship is irrelevant to the legal case against her. But you could help me. You have connections, resources. I could, but I won't. The silence stretched between us. When Elise spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. I loved you. No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me. You loved the security I provided, the lifestyle we built together, the image of the perfect couple. But you didn't love me enough to be faithful. You didn't love me enough to be honest, and you sure as hell didn't love me enough to resist Janet's manipulation. That's not true, isn't it? If you had really loved me, you would have told Janet to mind her own business the first time she suggested you were settling for less. You would have talked to me about your doubts instead of seeking validation from our neighbor. You would have fought for us instead of looking for an exit strategy. I made mistakes. You made choices, and now you get to live with the consequences of those choices, just like I had to live with the consequences of trusting you. I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside my office window, the city hummed with life. People making choices, facing consequences, building and destroying relationships with casual cruelty and unexpected grace. I thought about Derek, wherever he was, probably still trying to charm his way into someone else's life. I thought about Janet, sitting in a jail cell, finally facing the reckoning she'd been building toward for years. And I thought about Elise, alone and scared and reaping what she'd sown. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely at peace. Epilogue: The Glass House. 1 year later, I sold the glass house and moved across town to a brick colonial with small windows and a privacy fence. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. I was done living in a fishbowl, done putting my life on display for the neighbors to judge. The new owners were a young couple with a baby on the way. They loved the open floor plan, the natural light, the way you could see from one end of the house to the other without obstruction. "It's so bright and airy," the wife gushed during the final walkthrough, "like living in a magazine." "Just remember to close the curtains at night," I told them. "The windows face the street," they laughed, thinking I was joking about privacy. I didn't bother to explain that some lessons can only be learned through experience. Derek never came back to town. According to Mrs. Durham, he'd found work in Portland and was dating a divorced real estate agent with 2 kids. I wished them well. Some people were meant to keep moving, keep starting over, keep leaving wreckage in their wake. Janet was sentenced to 4 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution to her victims. She'd tried to implicate Elise in the fraud, but the evidence showed that Elise had been genuinely ignorant of her friend's criminal activities. Stupid and naive, perhaps, but not criminal. Elise lost her CPA license anyway. The state board found that her failure to detect obvious red flags in Janet's finances constituted professional negligence. She was working as a bookkeeper for a small nonprofit now, making 1/3 of her former salary and living in a studio apartment across town. I ran into her once at the grocery store. She looked older, tired, wearing clothes from Target instead of designer boutiques. She saw me first and tried to duck down a different aisle, but I caught her eye before she could escape. "Tate," she said quietly, "how are you?" "Good. You?" "Getting by." She gestured at her cart, which contained mostly generic brands and frozen dinners. "Learning to live on a budget." "I'm sorry things worked out the way they did." She studied my face, looking for sarcasm or hidden meaning. "Are you really?" I thought about it honestly. "I'm sorry you got caught up in Janet's mess. I'm sorry your career got destroyed. But I'm not sorry we broke up. That needed to happen. Even if Janet hadn't manipulated me? Especially if Janet hadn't manipulated me, because it means you were willing to cheat for no reason at all." Elise nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About who I was back then, what I thought I wanted. I was so focused on having the perfect life that I forgot to actually live it." "What do you mean?" "The house, the job, the engagement ring, the wedding plans. It was all about the image, about what other people would think when they looked at us. I never stopped to ask myself if I was actually happy." "Were you?" "I don't know. I think I was happy with the idea of being happy. Does that make sense?" It did, unfortunately. I'd been guilty of the same thing, so focused on building the perfect life that I'd missed the signs that my partner wasn't invested in actually living it. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said. "I hope you do too." We parted ways in the cereal aisle, 2 people who'd shared 5 years and a broken engagement, now strangers shopping for groceries on a Tuesday evening. It was oddly peaceful, that final conversation. No drama, no recriminations, just 2 people acknowledging that they'd both learned something from the wreckage of their relationship. I finished my shopping and drove home to my brick house with its small windows and private backyard. I grilled a steak, opened a beer, and sat on my deck watching the sunset through the trees. My phone buzzed with a text from Kayla. "Drinks at Mike's? New girl at the gym wants to meet you." I smiled and typed back, "Maybe next week. Enjoying the quiet tonight." "Your loss. She's a lawyer. Smart, funny, doesn't trust easily." "Sounds dangerous." "The best ones usually are." I laughed and put my phone away. Maybe I'd meet the lawyer next week. Maybe I'd stay single for another year. Maybe I'd eventually find someone who understood that love wasn't about perfect images and magazine-worthy relationships, but about choosing each other every day, even when it was hard. But tonight, I was content to sit in my private backyard, in my house with its solid walls and small windows, watching the sky fade from orange to purple to black. I'd learned the hard way that glass houses were beautiful but fragile, and that sometimes the best view was the one nobody else could see. The dog came out and settled beside my chair, her warm weight against my leg. Luna had been the only innocent party in the whole mess, and she'd adapted to our new life with typical golden retriever optimism. New house, new yard, new routines. As long as we were together, she was happy. I scratched behind her ears and finished my beer, thinking about windows and walls and the difference between transparency and vulnerability. Somewhere across town, Elise was probably eating a frozen dinner in her studio apartment, learning to live with the consequences of her choices. Somewhere else, Janet was counting down the days until her parole hearing. And somewhere in Portland, Derek was probably charming another woman with his practiced smile and hollow promises. But here, in my brick house with its privacy fence and small windows, I was exactly where I belonged. I'd learned to check the locks, draw the curtains, and keep my business to myself. Some lessons were worth the price of admission. The stars came out one by one, visible through the gap in the trees. I stayed outside until the mosquitoes drove me in, then locked the door behind me and went to bed in a house where no one could see inside unless I invited them. It was the best sleep I'd had in years,